Alrighty, so the top of this. Now, this panel happens to just be straight, but I'm going to show you a different technique here, simply because these are typically not, 90% of the time, the top of a panel isn't going to be perfectly straight, unless you're doing a, off of a hard top or something like that. There's going to be a little bit of curve, on the front curtains and even on the sides. If your hard top isn't perfectly straight, you want to make this panel fit the crookedness of the hardtop. So again, we determined that this finish was going to be 1 3/4 inch, just the same as the sides are, but we're going to do it 2 different ways here. The process is pretty much the same. I'm gonna pattern, and then I'm going to pull down for our finished edge, and let me grab this weight bag here. So I just pulled it down 3/4 inch. I'm going to reset my scribe tool to 1 inch. And now again, I'm working on the inside first, right? All right, so let's do this. Let's draw this 1 inch. I'm going to put my reference lines on. And then I'm going to pull it up, and I'm going to find 1 1/4 inch again. So that's the same, right? The same as what we did at the bottom. All right, and this is the inside. Now I'm going to take my panel and I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to describe it. I'm going to drop it down, and this time I don't need to weight it down because I'm not using the scribe tool. All I'm going to do is put my reference lines on here. All right. And I can move that up. I don't need the top mark. I don't need it, and I'll show you why here in a second. But what I do need is I need my cut line for my finished edge. Gone through this several times, and people always ask, well, can't you do this with just do it with a ruler? Well, the answer is yes, if it's straight. But I'm showing you this as a simulation because, like I said, those tops are rarely ever completely straight. So we don't need any reinforcing on the top, and is that right? Yeah, that's right. Okay, so we don't need any reinforcing in here because this is what this simulation is going to be putting Ketter welt up there. Now you can do, if you're putting a zipper or Ketter, you can do this a bunch of different ways. This is just a different way to do it. So once I have this, let's go to the machine now and we'll get this component made. All right, so I'm always pretty big on showing people how I do this, in real life and in the real shop. Now, if you notice, I didn't fold and crease this. I have it right here because it's straight, right? And there's no reliefs in it. All I need to do is fold this over, and I can do it right in front of the sewing machine. I fold it and crease it and put this stitch line on, and I can do this pretty easy with just my finger, and then hold it down, run your stitch line. So it's eliminating that extra All right, now we know that we know that the inside of this, or the inside piece, is our finished piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the inside on top of the outside, and because this is so small, it's just 1 3/4 inches, this is practical to do. I'm going to line up, I'm my reference lines. I'm going to line them up. I'm going to put it right on top of each other, and then I'm going to come all the way down here to the bottom, and I'm going to stitch both pieces together. All right, now that's all I'm going to do to this. Okay, I can come back in here now, and this is why you leave this extra. Now I can trim this off, and these pieces are exactly the same. They're exactly the same. Even if you measure them out exactly, you know, and you put it on and try to line it up, they won't be as exact as just cutting it off there. And we also have our tails now. See how our little tails inside here are exposed? They're not sewn down. Well, they will be, because when we sew our ketterwelt on here, we're going to put 2 stitch lines on our ketterwelt. That's going to get that sewn down in there. All right, so this is all that we need to do in order to bond it, and then after we bond it, we'll come back and put our ketterwelt on there. So let's go do that. All righty. Now, if this was just one curve and you had this finished off, it'd be pretty tough to say, you know, which is the top and the bottom. That's why you always write that down. And I have the inside, and this is the inside piece right here. So let's put this on here. Here's a little trick on especially bigger pieces. If you just get it kind of started in there and hold your thumb down and then just draw that, it'll pull it on there pretty easy for you. So straighten it out, line it up to the you notice I'm lining the bottom edge up. I'm looking at the bottom edge on there, and that is right on the money. And we could run one piece of tape because it's straight. All right, so fold it over, and actually, yeah, let me clean this off real quick. If you use, I use Bounty paper towels. Seems to wipe up some of the paper towels that you get. When you touch this glue, it sticks instantly, and then you're sitting there picking paper towel off. So I like to use the Bounty ones; they work best. All right, 2 glue lines. All right, tell you what happened, and I don't know that you can see that. My hand just got stuck when I was pulling that. So I want to make sure I get that glue all the way up in there. So you don't be afraid to come back and touch it up a little bit. But you don't want to get the glue to run off onto the protective film. Always rub it down, make sure you get that glue to spread real good, and then we'll weight this down. All right, let me let that kick, and then we'll come back. All right, with that bonded on there, I already took the tape off of it. Do the same thing with your reference lines. Cut that off flat. Now, here's what I want you to take a look at. And this is I'm kind of famous for saying this. If this stuff's laying flat and nice at the table without a bunch of wrinkles and puckers and stuff in it, if you do it right, it's going to look nice on the boat as well. On the inside and the outside, you can see that there's not, I mean, there's a little bit right there, but that's, you know, that's within tolerance, you know. But, you know, if this was, you know, looped up, which I'm sure that you guys have ever fabricated, you've seen it before. And if you try to put binding on that, you know, it wants to loop up. So let's get it nice and flat. All right, now we're going to work on our sides. One more thing before we go to the sides. With vinyl material, PVC coated materials, if I'm going to sew this to Ketter, I don't have a problem with leaving that cut edge at the top. You know, because you're not going to really see it because the Ketter welt's just going to butt right up to the Ketter welt out there. So the options here are to bind this and put the Ketter on. But remember now, you're moving that, you know, at least an eighth, maybe a quarter of an inch if you're putting binding on there, and then sticking that onto the Ketter, because that will make an adjustment down here at the bottom. Now, if you're doing track to track, where you're sliding it in up here and then zipping it down here, very critical to get those measurements right. So that's just a different program doing that. The other way to do it is to do it like you did the bottom. Leave the outside a ½ inch longer, fold it over, stitch it on if you want to have that nice clean finished look. But there again, I don't have a problem with leaving this. And sometimes what I'll do is, and now I'm going to sew the Ketter welt twice. Instead of having 3 stitch lines up there, instead of sewing this, when we're on the table, I will actually just take transfer tape and tape it together and then stick it on here and bond it, right? And then when I go back, I can sew it 2 times with the Ketter welt and only have 2 stitch lines up there. So just different ways to do it. Let's get into doing the side.